Rogue Angels is a cooperative sci-fi legacy game driven by character choices and a strong narrative with multiple paths, tactical combat with fluent turns, and action management with asymmetric abilities. Set in the Burning Suns universe, you get the opportunity to become a hero and help save the galaxy through impactful choices for your characters and their legacies. Welcome to my first impressions of Rogue Angels. Hey everyone, there's Athekos, and today I'm bringing you my first impressions of Rogue Angels, a co-op sci-fi legacy game that is coming to Kickstarter on February 1st, 2022. I had the opportunity to play the introductory mission of the digital prototype with the designer of the game. I had a really good time. Since I only played one mission so far, I'm not doing a full-fledged review, but will give you my first impressions instead. Before I do so, let me first explain how the game works. The map here in the middle of the table is one of the most important pieces of the game. This is where the players move their characters and the enemies, as well as solve puzzles and complete missions. Underneath that map, there is a player aid where the most important concepts of the game are detailed. Luckily, the game is quite light on rules. In the digital version I played, there were 6 characters to choose from. I decided to go with Lelia, a female neomorph that focused on healing and long-range combat. That's a concept I can get behind, so I chose her. Besides your character sheets and your standee, you also receive a few cards that will dictate the actions you can choose during your turn. The game also has a legacy element, as you can see on screen. This of course is still a prototype, as is everything you see in this video. On the left there's your standing with the different factions, on the bottom are specific story points you can unlock, and on the right you can see the origin of the character you play. For this legacy element there will be recharge packs, so you can replay the campaign without having to sacrifice that legacy element in your further playthroughs. This is something a lot of games do nowadays, such as Alba, which I backed on Kickstarter a little while ago. Apart from that sheet, there will be no other legacy element. This is the character board you will be using for most of your actions. This is the side for the introductory missions. Future missions will use this side here with the personality diagram on the left and scars on the right. That also means that in the first mission you won't have to worry about the 4 colored quadrants at the bottom of the cards in your hand, since these relate to the other side of the board. At the top of the board you can see your character's race, name and special ability. On the right you have markers for focus and shields. Every character starts with 3 focus and this specific character with 3 shields. At the top right you can see the activation token that is flipped after your turn. After everyone has taken a turn, this is flipped to the active side again. This track at the bottom of the board is the time tracker, which keeps track of the turns you have left to complete your current mission segment. When it's your turn, you perform 2 of the following actions. Play an action card, concentrate to gain 2 focus, or rest and move all cards to the left on your player board. The primary action is playing an action card. There are movement cards with a movement symbol at the top right, and action cards with a hand symbol, and effect cards that take effect in the cooldown phase. If you want to play an action card, you play it on the cooldown track. For example, this movement card will be played on slot 2, because that is the cooldown cost you can see at the top left of the card. You can also play the card higher, if you want or need to. Under the image of the card, you can see how many dice you roll after you play it. In this case, it's 3 dice. The results will be added to whatever your action card is already doing. On the other side of the player aid you can see all the roads possible. You can get +1 or +2 to the effect of the action card, or receive shield or movement points additionally to the effect of the action card. In this example here you could decide to take the 2 +1s and add them to the number in the square brackets, so you would be able to move 2 squares. Or in this case you could move 3 and gain a shield. Here for the sniper this roll would not upgrade the card's action but add movement points. So you could shoot and move. That is a pretty neat concept and allows for some interesting tactical plays. At the end of your turn you always rest and all your cards move to the left on the cooldown track. As soon as a card reaches the spot on the very left, you receive the card again and put it in your hand. This card can now be used again. The cards also move when you use a rest action as an action in your turn. You could also use the system in such a way that you use a basic move action card that has a cooldown of 0, you immediately receive that card back, play it again, and receive it again. This way you have played that action twice and still have it available for your next turn. Of course this action is a lot weaker than those with a cooldown cost higher than 1. The story of the game details that for 1,000 years the galactic assembly of sovereign civilizations has governed the burning suns, and by providing a forum for cooperation between the most advanced races of the galaxy, the longest peace in galactic history was achieved, described as a truly golden age of harmony and prosperity. But eventually and inevitably the assembly failed and war started consuming the galaxy. The galaxy wasn't a safe place anymore, and violence decides the pecking order. For the freelancers and free spirits of Brimstone Base, home of the Hellfire Pirates, risk is all in their existence. But someone always has a job for mercenary. War, after all, is good for business, and this is where you come in. Each mission has an introduction in the campaign book that is a digital component of the campaign, but there will be a pledge for a physical version. The book will have around 700 pages, which is as much as 2 novels approximately. However, the mission briefs provide you with the story background and, of course, the tasks you will have to carry out. These are labeled mission parameters and tell you the turn limit, depending on the player count and the conditions for the mission segment's success and failure. The first mission was simple enough to get into the game, but utilized a lot of the important mechanisms of the game. The characters first drop all guns in order to learn how to move and activate contraptions. This played out like a good video game tutorial that slowly teaches you all the basics. And there's a lot to first grasp in the game, but it's presented in a way that you learn the basics quite quickly. At the beginning we needed to get to a specific position before we had to get to a door, unlock it and then activate a cabinet. This taught us how to move and perform basic actions. This is where another mechanic comes in. When you do an action such as unlocking a door or activating a terminal, you need to draw one of these tokens. The action is successfully performed when you collect 3 of these tokens. This ensures that actions take longer than 1 turn. This is especially interesting when you're in combat with enemies. After we unlocked the door and activated the cabinet, we received our weapons, and just in time, because enemies then started appearing. Our goal was to eliminate all of them. That was when we started learning about combat. In the beginning, we needed to understand how the AI functions exactly, because each enemy behaves differently. That's a concept I've seldomly seen in a game. I very much enjoyed that. After we successfully disposed of the enemies, I wasn't that helpful in that regard. The mission continued. This time we had 2 goals, and we needed to fulfill one of those. Either we needed to dispose of all enemies, or open the door to disable the console and get all players on board the ship. Well, we decided to go for combat. And that decision directly affected how the story continues, including how the faction standing changed with the legacy element. There are even more rules and mechanisms, but this should be enough to give you a pretty good idea of how the game works. So, what's my first impression of the game? First of all, I very much like the artwork. It looks really nice. This is a job done great. I hope that this art can also be seen in the campaign book. That would make it so much nicer. Since this is a prototype and a digital one at that, I'm not able to speak about the components. Also, I haven't seen much of the story yet, but I really like how the missions are structured. It is completely clear what you need to do, and also it is totally transparent which actions will lead to different outcomes. I'm a huge fan of storytelling games, and this one seems to have quite a lot going for it. I really liked playing the game. It has quite a few interesting mechanisms that I haven't seen in any other games thus far. I especially enjoyed the way every action has a specific cooldown. Yes, the sniper is quite powerful, but, just as in real life, you will not be able to fire it constantly. It's not a machine gun after all. It will take 4 entire rounds until it is active again. Well, sure, you could also rest to make the cooldown go down faster, but then you can't do any other action. This makes the game really tactical, and I love that. That also ties into the cooperative nature of the game that works incredibly well. In my playthrough I wasn't alone. While I was able to help in combat, I was rather picking off smaller enemies from afar and activating contraptions. My partner was the brute, running into enemies and pretty much crushing them. That was good team play, and not many games pull that off well. Rogue Angels definitely does. But there's also other small mechanisms that really spice up the game. Randomly pulling tokens to simulate specific actions, such as unlocking doors, is an incredible idea. This gets the idea across really well that sometimes doing such actions might not work as well as other times. That adds not only a realistic touch, but also a lot of tension. All in all, I thoroughly enjoyed this game, not only because of the mission structure and artwork, but also because of some really intricate and interesting mechanisms. If you are a fan of story-based and or cooperative board game experiences, I highly suggest you keep an eye on this campaign, which will launch next week. Alright, you made it to the end of my video. If you enjoyed it, why don't you let me know by liking, commenting and maybe even subscribing. And even if you don't, just thanks for sticking around. It's great to have you here. By the way, there are many more videos on my channel. Maybe you want to take a little peek? Okay, that's all from my side. I will see you in the next video. Take care everyone, and cheers.